right, so very good afternoon to all of you, our cherished viewers of Hot Issues, and welcome to another exciting edition of Hot Issues. This afternoon on Hot Issues, I'm currently at the Ghana National Fire Service. We're going to be having a discussion on the fire situation in the country. How come the fire service is unable to work to your expectation? We go for a short break. My name is Winston Amwa. When we return, I'll be introducing my guest, and then we'll begin our discussion. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break. All right, so welcome back from the short break, and thanks for staying with us. My guest this afternoon on Hot Issues is the Chief Fire Officer in Ghana. He has lots of awards. Now, he was adjudged the best Chief Fire Officer in Africa for last year. And we're told that the Ghana National Fire Service, for instance, was called upon by the Togolese to go and help put out fire. I guess that's something that would surprise many of you. Dr. Albert Brown Gaisie, good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for joining us.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and I believe you're well too.
Very fine.
So how come you're able to fight fire in Togo, all the way from Ghana, and yet you're unable to fight fire in Ghana?
Well, I think there had been that misconception about the fire service and its operational response. I keep on saying that when you want to criticize a particular profession, you need to understand the modus operandi in terms of how the institution operates, its standard operational instructions, as well as standard operational procedures. And until you get yourself acquainted and familiarize with the strategies, the tactical and the operational approach of such institutions, you may be tempted to have your own misconception about the institution. So maybe in course of our discussions, we may have the opportunity to explain the tactical and the common procedures for the fire service. But to go on that of the Togo, just about 2-3 years ago, we had a distress call through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that the Togolese market was on fire. To be precise, the main market in Togo was on fire, and they needed assistance. We quickly had to mobilize 4 fire tenders from Sugakope, Akachi, Denu, and one of the stations to respond. They got there, and within some few minutes, they were able to extinguish the fire. We had the compliments of the Togolese authorities, to precise the president. We have a letter to that effect, complimenting and congratulating us for what we did.
So let's come to Ghana. Yes, you've done it in Togo, but the situation in Ghana is different. There are many people who would fault the Ghana National Fire Service for its inability to put out fire. Why are you unable to do so?
First of all, when you are to report a fire outbreak, it is received at the control room. There are certain basic information they may require from you. They may like to find out from you the address of the fire, whoever is calling. Who is calling, because there have been instances where we receive false calls. False calls, host calls. People call the fire service under the pretense of the fact that there's fire, only to respond and realizing that there's no fire. So there are certain basic information that we receive before we have what we call the turnout. The turnout is the response by the fire engine. On their way to the fire ground, they have what we call the mobile procedure. After the mobile procedure, they have the arrival procedure. The arrival procedure is to inform the control room as to the nature of fire, the occupancy involved, vis-a-vis the composition of the fire. It's not a question of the fact that you get to the fire ground and you start firefighting with water. The extinguishing media has several interpretations and several approaches. The nature of fire determines the extinguishing medium. For instance, we have Class A to D fires. Class A fires are what we call the solid fuel fires. These are fires involving timber, cloth, and other items that can easily be extinguished by water. Class B is the liquid fuel fires, what we call the flammable liquids. Those fires you cannot extinguish with water. And we have the Class C fires, which are gaseous fuel. These are fires involving gases. These are hydrocarbons like butane, propane. Then you have the Class D, which are electrical, and the rest which are metallic. Okay. So each fire and the extinguishing medium.
Yes, but for me and for many Ghanaians, the most important thing is that once we call you, you are there on time to put out the fire, isn't it?
Yes.
So how come sometimes you get there Then you tell us, you know what, we didn't, I mean, there's been instances, for instance, you get to this only to realize you didn't even have water in your tank.
Well, that had been a wrong perception. I don't think any fire tender will be at a fire station without water. Then we need to do some level of random sampling and check whether the stations we have all over the country do not have water in them. We don't buy the water. So I don't see the need why we shouldn't have been able to fill our fire tenders with water. The only issue we have to consider is that when we get to the fire ground, is the magnitude, the spread of fire that determines the quantum of water that must be used, especially when it is class A, that is the solid fuel fire. And normally what happens is that you may even have to use 1 or 2 fire tenders to be fighting the fires. The most significant aspect is the continuous flow of water. What we do use is that because of the fact that the hydrants, the pressure level of the hydrants are quite low, and you don't have the serviceability of these hydrants at certain times, we are compelled to use fire engines to replenish those at the fire ground. So when we get to the fire ground and you see the fire tenders running up and down, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are short of water.
But why don't
they
you work?
are replenishing.
Good. You're replenishing, but
Yes.
why don't you work on the fire hydrants so the pressure would be high so you don't have to go back?
That is an issue that needs to be discussed.
Let's discuss it.
Yes, we have recently had inspection of fire hydrants in Accra and some parts of the country. We have a hydrant map that we normally follow. But I think you would agree with me that some of the fire hydrants are not working. They are unserviceable. It's as a result of our attitude towards safety precaution. Generally, a matter of discipline. You go around and some of the chambers have been turned into refuse dumps. People need water and they end up, using hammer to be damaging the valves, the heads of these fire hydrants. And I believe very well that we need to change our attitude towards the maintenance of these hydrants. Apart from that, you have a situation where the hydrant, the water that flows through the hydrant seems to be treated water. So people end up using the water for other purposes. Other countries, you have a dual system where you have both untreated and treated. The treated water is used for domestic consumption, whilst the untreated is used for firefighting.
Who sees to the management of the hydrants?
The management of the hydrant, the servicing of the hydrant is done by the water company. The fire service only uses the water, but notwithstanding, we are concerned also about the monitoring. That is why we need to go around and check whether they are
Is that not the more reason why when there are problems with the fire hydrant, for instance, you ensure you liaise with the Ghana Water Company to ensure they are in good shape, since you would have to use them?
That is why I indicated that we have serviceable and unserviceable hydrants. The serviceable hydrants are those that we depend on for firefighting, as are now. Most of them are serviceable. But the unserviceable ones are those that I'll say that they're being kept well, in spite of the fact that I know water company also does their best to monitor them to ensure that they are serviceable. Individuals end up damaging them. And when you damage these hydrants continuously, at the end of the day, one has a difficulty depending on them for effective and efficient use for firefighting.
Is it not because you've not educated people well enough to know the importance of these hydrants?
Well, the education has been ongoing. As you are aware, the media, you've been playing your part. You've been covering most of it. Even last week, TV3 and other stations had to cover the serviceability of these hydrants. But what we are concerned is that I believe very well that everybody has a stake to play. I mean, we all stakeholders. The public has a role to play. Why is it that in other countries people don't damage hydrants?
Because they know.
They know what?
They know what the hydrants stand for.
Exactly. So why
Over
don't
here,
you-
some people
so
don't
why
know.
don't we all of us take it as a responsibility?
Starting off with the Ghana Fire Service.
We have
leading
been
it.
doing it because it will be beneficial to us if the hydrants are serviceable. And it's because at times we've been negligent along the line. Either it's a matter of us not taking safety preparedness.
Who's been negligent along the line?
I'm talking generally because we need to
The
put
Ghana National Fire Service.
not Ghana
inclusive?
National Fire Service.
No, you said generally, and I'm saying, is it inclusive?
We need to realize that fire service does not cause fire.
No, but fire service is supposed to teach people safety,
yes, that is
precautionary
something-
measures.
You have been witnesses.
You're supposed to establish fire,
do that.
fighting groups in the communities.
We do that. Your media house has been covering our programs when it comes to education. Most of the educational programs we embark upon have been covered by the media houses.
But if you've-
And that goes to attest the fact that we've intensified our media coverage. Like last 2-3 days, we've closed down some of the nightclubs. That had been done because they have been given the opportunity to comply with their safety precautions. safety protection, safety prevention. If we give you the opportunity and you tend to be adamant, we have no option than to close you down. And that is what we're going to do now. We've started doing it, we'll continue doing it. And we'll extend this to the media houses.
Exactly.
So don't tend to have a different perception about the fire service if we start closing some of the media houses down.
Well, we definitely will not have a different perception about the Ghana National Fire Service. In fact, the first thing I looked at when I was climbing up for this interview was to look at the stairs, whether I could accommodate 2 or 3 persons in the times of fire, because at least some fire service officials have educated me, and so I know that. So our guest this afternoon on Hot Issues is Dr. Albert Brown Gaisie, also known as Bunna. That's the Chief of Fire. That's the title he loves so much. We go for our final break. When we return, we'll look at issues of some fire stations. And also, the National Fire Service is supposed to give, technical reports on buildings in this country. How are they doing that after this break? Stay with us. This is Hot Issues. All right, so welcome back from that short break, and thanks for staying with us. This is Hot Issues, and I am Winston Amwa. Our guest today is Dr. Albert Brown Gaisie, who is the Chief Fire Officer, and also loves to be, he was given the title Bunna, and that's Fire Chief, and that's a great one. But Dr. Gaisie, so let's get back to the issues. Do you have the required logistics in dealing with the fire situation in this country?
Well, thank you very much for this question. Every institution would like to have more of logistics, and in terms of what we would need, we may always wish to get more. In other countries, you have corporate institutions that complement the support in terms of the logistical base of the fire service. America, communities even donate, and that is what would also support us. I believe in one thing. Whatever little you have, you must ensure the effective and judicious use of it. Because if you have many, and at the end of the day, you don't take good care of them, you have achieved nothing. We have considerable number of fire engines, but I keep on saying that the fact that you have fire tenders doesn't mean you are fire safe. The sector minister has assured me we've made needs assessment presented to the Ministry of Interior, and just about a week ago, we had a meeting where the minister, the sector minister for Interior, my immediate boss, has come out with the government's efforts, the government's intention to equip us with some of the protective clothing that we want. So the needs assessment have been sent, where he even assured me that he may even be thinking of making a proposal for a helicopter to be purchased for the fire service, which is a laudable idea, because some areas are not accessible. You may need area suppression. If there are valleys, for instance, you cannot easily get to the valley. You need areas of suppression. So I would say that we may not say we have all that we need to have, but with modern technology, advancement in technology, we may need some equipment which are of latest technological models, like hydraulic platforms that can shoot to 40 floors, 30 floors, and ladders that can shoot to maybe 15 floors or whatever. At the moment, we don't have them. We have the technical and strategic approach in fighting fires at these high-rise buildings. But the availability of hydraulic platform is such that it may complement, it may respond within the fastest terms if they are available. But notwithstanding that, we have put in the appropriate contingency to fight these fires should it occur. That is why there's a need to make provision for certain safety requirements and devices that will complement firefighting at those levels.
And are these devices there in the buildings that are at those levels?
Yes, some are there. Some are there. Some are there, some may not be there. Those that are not there, it is a requirement that you must put it there. That is why we have intensified the safety audits. Some buildings were put up some years back. Some were put up 20 years back, 25 years. And at that time, in terms of science and technology, they were not as advanced as today. And it's our duty to assist them to make sure that they see it as a requirement for the provision and issuance of fire certificate. Because we've categorized our risk level on high risk, medium risk, and low risk. And those of high risk level, you need to satisfy these requirements before we certify, before we give you a fire certificate that you are more or less, eligible to be recognized for firefighting.
How come we're now talking about this? This should have been done long ago.
Well, it's been done. It's been done. But like I was telling you, some are ongoing. Development doesn't.
How long shall we
development doesn't catch up in a day. Gradually, it's a question of enforcement, and it's a question of ensuring that people comply with safety requirements.
Exactly.
That is what we are doing as an institution, and I believe very well that we are making headway. Maybe at the next time we have the interview, we'll be able to give you the statistics in terms of safety audits. Or I'll let my PR also come to your studios to give you a presentation of how many high-rise buildings that have been in conformity with safety requirements and those that are yet to comply, and the measures that we have put in place towards that.
There are many who are concerned that you have lots of fuel stations in, in residential areas. And those who give the example, for instance, I'm going to show you one place. If you go to Atomic Junction, right here in Accra, you realize that there are about two fuel stations. There's an LPG station also there, and there's a loading area. And there's always huge traffic in there, all around the place. There are those who've been concerned. How come you have an LPG filling station, petrol diesel filling station, people boarding buses at that same place, and there's also a huge traffic there? If anything happens, there we go.
What you need to understand is that, one, you need to identify the hazard, identify risk, and develop a contingency towards dealing with those issues that I have spoken about. The fire service is one out of several agencies that seem to be responsible towards regularization, certification, and approval of requirements for the installation, the establishment of filling stations, as you did remember, you did speak about. Now, the most crucial aspect is that we are responsible for the fire safety audit, fire safety coverage, fire safety assessment. Other agencies also have their role. I know EPA is responsible for the environmental impact assessment. We collaborate along the line. We looked at those issues that I have spoken about to enable us complement the activities of the other institutions. In course of our safety audits, if we realize that you do not conform to safety standards, ours is to recommend to these agencies. The agencies also have their role to play. And don't forget that by law, the assemblies are the final authority and the institutions that issues final permits to the planning committees at the assembly level. They are responsible for the issuance of the final permits, certification permits.
And if you advise them against issuing, can they still issue?
Well, we have made several reports. We have made several inputs. And I believe finally we may not have to determine the issuance of that permit or not. You may have to do a lot of study, in terms of the procedures. But our concern is that where we realize that the area, last year, we had to close about 5 or 6 filling stations that did not seem to conform to safety standards. Along the line, we had some problems, which I may not have to disclose them now. We are dealing with those problems. But you see, you need to understand that urbanization had gone to the extent that some of these filling stations, at the time that they were given the licenses to operate, the rural, the urban or the urbanization wasn't as advanced as it used to be now. The most important thing is that we must come up with contingency measures that will prevent the fires from occurring. You go to places like Chicago and other places in advanced countries, you have filling stations right in the center of the town, but they don't have fires. Why is it that we have them in the town where we have fires?
Tell me.
It tells you that people do not comply with their safety precautions. People tend to behave negatively towards their own personal safety. And these are the issues that I keep on saying that it must be a collective responsibility. The fire service needs to conduct the safety audit, will prescribe what you need to know, and you also have the responsibility to comply. So at the end of the day, it's give and take affair.
Okay.
And I believe when we do that, we'll all be fire safe. We'll all be fire conscious. We'll all come out as a nation, community, that seem to be compliant to safety.
Okay. All right, so Dr. Gaisie, I mean, I realize that you've been PRO of the Ghana National Fire Service before, and you're now Chief Fire Officer. Take us through your life in the Ghana National Fire Service, finally, and your achievements.
Well, you did mention earlier that I'm Buna the first.
Yes.
Which
yes.
I'm proud of.
I said that, yes.
And I'm Sudonda also the first.
Okay.
Buna the first, Wa traditional area, and Sudona for Dagon. You know, those my instruments.
Yeah.
Like you did mention, I joined the fire service as a public relations officer and young journalist, and I became, along the line administrator, I became deputy regional commander, became a regional commander for Accra region for about 4 years, moved to the Eastern region as a regional commander, close to about 1.5 to 2 years, moved to Ashanti region as a regional commander for close to about 6 years. I was the longest served commander in the Ashanti region. From there, I was moved to the headquarters as the Director for Research, Monitoring and Planning. Later, I was moved to Rural Fires as Director for Rural Fires, moved back to Research, Monitoring and Planning. Later, became the Director of Operations, became the Acting Chief Fire Officer, then became Deputy Chief Fire Officer, then moved to the Chief Fire Officer. The interesting aspect is that I was a Deputy Chief Fire Officer for 20 years.
Ah.
Oh, yes, before I became a substantive Chief Officer. Notwithstanding that, by God's grace, I give glory to God to how far He's taken me. I'm a guest lecturer to Philadelphia Fire Academy. I'm a member of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. I'm a member also, as the only African who's a member of the National Fire Protection Association of America. I've been trained in about 20 states in America, all related to fire service. I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing in Ghana. I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Administrative Management in Ghana. I'm also a member of the Ghana Institute of Management. I'm a member of, I didn't mention today, I was a fire chief, and I'm a member of the National Fire Protection Association in America. I'm also a member of the Fire Protection Association also in Britain. I've had several publications as part of my career, and also I wanted to say that it's part of my capacity to develop the human resource base of the Ghana National Fire Service. I took over as a substantive chief officer about 2 years ago, and hopefully I should be retiring this year, December. And I would say that after taking over, out of 6,000 junior officers who have been in the system, I have promoted 5,000 plus. Out of close to about 700 and something, 50 senior officers, I've promoted about close to 600 officers. These are officers who have been on their rank for about 15 years, 13 years, 14 years. And I would say that it was actually impacting on the performance, operational performance of the service. This year, about close to 800 to 900 officers are going to have their examinations. And if they pass, hopefully they may also have their promotion. And eventually means that close to about 90% of the junior officers will have been promoted. I would also say that I've, since my taking over, I've also opened close to about 38 fire stations within 2 years. And alongside with that also, we also say that we've repaired close to about 30 fire engines who hitherto would have been auctioned. And a lot has been achieved. I would say that we've acquired lands at Douai and Kwanta, of which we intend using it to build the fire academy for the northern sector. We've even started the project. We intend building the staff and command college at Edra in the Edra district of Ashanti, and also to build up Fire Volunteer Institute at Tepa. You know, that is also going to be an institute that we shall use to train fire volunteers at the community level, and also traditional authorities and people who are not firemen. That is where we're going to train them.
Okay.
So including even the media personnel.
Exactly, that would be great.
Yes, including the media personnel. So we have a lot of activities, and we intend also extending this facility as a center of excellence to train firefighters in the West Africa sub-region, because we don't have any fire service institute academy in the West Africa sub-region. So what we want to embark upon is going to be a center of excellence for the West African community.
Okay. Well, that's a great, some great achievements here. But finally, I mean, how do you feel when, fire investigation reports, recommendations are not implemented?
Well, I believe very well that, like I did mention in my introduction, you owe a property, you owe an investment. You struggle to acquire this investment. The first person who must be concerned about his own safety is the one who owns the property. Why don't you show interest? For instance, to give you an example, you have buildings that are barricaded with iron bars. You go to some of our buildings, structures. We are concerned about security more than safety. And I keep on saying that if a thief, an armed robber, is to enter your house and he gets access of your briefcase that has money, dollars, the armed robber will pick the dollars and leave you behind. The fire gets into your room, fire will not pick dollars and leave you behind. Fire gets into your room and burns everything, including yourself. So we don't need to be, you may be secured, but may not be safe. Likewise, you may be safe, but may not also be secured. So I want to take this opportunity through your medium, the hot issue, that people should take the fire prevention, fire education as a hot issue. They must also take it as a hot issue, since it is a concern of the firemen. The fireman is there to assist you, the fireman is there to educate you, the fireman is there to fight your fire. At the end of the day, you owe it as a responsibility to acquire fire extinguishers. Because if you can invest, put up a building that worth 200,000 Ghana cedis and cannot buy fire extinguishers that worth only 10,000 cedis, then where lies your safety? Likewise, if you can buy a vehicle, 100,000 worth of a vehicle, and you cannot buy a fire extinguisher that is only 200 cedis, where lies your safety? So it's an appeal.
Indeed, it's an appeal. Treat your safety as a hot issue. Dr. Albert Brown Gaisie,
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
We're
And let's have the opportunity through your medium to educate the public. I'm most grateful for the opportunity accorded us and wish you all the best. But we shall be at TV3 next week to inspect your fire safety measures.
Exactly, we shall be expecting you. Dr. Albert Brown Gaisie, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon on Hot Issues. Folks, my name is Winston. I'm on behalf of the team. I say thank you very much for joining us. And you make a date with me on Monday on Sunrise on 3FM 92.7. Have a lovely weekend.